Hello, testing. It's on. It's not making a noise.
You okay? Okay. Right.
Alrighty. Item number 5 on the agenda is approval of the legal services bid for consideration for new legal services since Mr. Clapp retired.
To accept.
Can you do a motion to reconvene, please?
Oh, we have to have a motion to reconvene? Okay, I'm sorry. I need a motion to reconvene the meeting.
I'll make a motion to reconvene our meeting. Do I need to state the time?
Yes, please.
At
10:07.
10:07.
Second?
Motion has been made by Commissioner Rich, second by Commissioner O'Donnell. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Meeting started again. Okay, legal services, PAL LLC.
Yes. So as you know, John Clapp submitted his retirement in early August, advising the town that he would be retiring from service on October 1st of 2019. As we mentioned, after 24 years of service to the town. With that being said, we just go over the timeline. I'm on page 28. We made the RFP for legal services, which Mr. Clapp did review. He made a few changes to it, a few recommendations. We made the RFP available on our website on August 15th. We made the deadline bids due by 4 p.m. on Friday, September 20th. We extended the deadline extension. We re-advertised the RFP again on Wednesday, September 12th. We extended the deadline to 4 p.m. on Friday, September 27th. And the bid opening meeting was conducted by staff on Tuesday, October 1st, 2019 at 3:15 p.m. We advertised the request for proposal on our town website, our town Facebook page, MML Classifieds, the Frederick News Post. We did the extension notice on the Frederick News Post, and the dates are listed there. We also emailed the RFP directly to four attorneys recommended by John Clapp, and we also advertised with the Frederick Bar Association. We received 2 bids. We received one from PAL LLC. In that firm, there would be 2 attorneys, Leslie Powell at $250 an hour, and Clark Adams, an associate attorney, at $160 an hour. And the second bid was from a William J. Holtzinger for $250 an hour. In reviewing the bids, a couple things jumped out at us. PAL LLC has 11 years of municipal experience working directly with municipalities, in particular the town of Thurmont, having the experiences then of representing the town, preparing ordinances, litigations, things of that nature, anything related to the town. Mr. Holtzinger, although he has worked with municipalities, he has no experience representing municipalities on the other side of it. The PAL LLC, or Leslie Powell, she has 30 years of experience with a variety of different courts, including Maryland and Virginia. She has excellent references, including the town of Thurmont, which their recommendation is on page 29. Leslie Powell was John Clapp's recommendation as a replacement. After a couple of weeks, we also asked Mr. Clapp for some additional recommendations. He provided us 3 others. Mr. Holtzinger was one of his recommendations, but he continued to stand by recommending Ms. Powell as his replacement. Just to highlight Ms. Powell, she graduated from the University of Baltimore, and then University of Maryland, Baltimore County, or University of Baltimore, it was the law school, University of Maryland, Baltimore County, and Georgetown College. She has professional experience beginning in 1987 as associate lawyer, worked her way up through a partner, owner, managing partner, and then owner again. She has bar memberships in several of the district courts for United States, District of Maryland, circuit courts. She submitted a writing sample. Her associate, he is good standing with the Virginia State Bar. He's in good standing with the Maryland State Bar. He graduated from the University of Virginia School of Law and then went to James Madison University. With these being said, then if you look at page 29, one of the references listed came from Jim Humrick with the town of Thurmont. Would you recommend her to the town? I'll just jump down to number 5. Absolutely, she will do a great job for you. She'll always give you the answer that's in the best interest of the town. There's never been any unresolved issues. The response time and communication is exemplary. She began there. Leslie was the town attorney when he was hired in 2014. You also see then Mr. Holtzinger has a reference from 2 insurance companies. So staff recommendations, the mayor reviewed both proposals as well, and we both strongly recommend Leslie Powell, LLC, as the town attorney to represent the town of Emmitsburg.
I need a motion to accept Leslie Powell, LLC, as the new town attorney.
Mr. Sweeney, I think you have a question to your left.
I will. We'll make the motion first, and then we'll have the discussion.
Okay, terrific. Sorry, Mr. Davis.
Motion, I need a motion for the...
I'll make the motion that we accept or we hire the legal services of Powell LLC as the new town attorney.
Okay, I have a motion's been made by Commissioner Davis. Is there a second?
Second?
Second by Commissioner O'Donnell.
Yes, sir.
Now there's discussion.
I know it's getting late. Just real quick question. Ms. Powell, Thurmont,
Mr. Ritz.
any other municipalities that not recommendations, that she currently works for
No.
in Frederick County?
No,
Okay.
not that I was made aware of, but no.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
No question, sir.
Okay. Commissioner Davis.
Good.
I don't have any. Commissioner Burrow.
I'm sorry I just jumped in there, Mr. President. I just
That's
went
fine.
ahead and started, so I'm finished. Thank you.
Oh, that's why I said we'll start discussion after. There's no more discussion. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any nays? Motion carries 5-0.
If the board would wish, I will invite her to the next town meeting to introduce herself.
Okay. Thank you. Alrighty, next agenda item is approval of the MS4.
And then I'm bailing.
Zach?
Yeah, so I'll just get us kicked off here. MS4, we've been talking about MS4 and MS4 permit for a couple of years now. Stormwater management, the Chesapeake Bay restoration. One of the requirements is we have to adopt our permit by October 31st of this year to remain in compliance with MDE. And I will turn it over to Zach, and if you have any questions, we'll both do our best to answer them. Again, this is a state mandate.
Let's see if this turns on here first. Looks like it's turning on right now.
I want to turn the light off.
Do you want the lights?
Yes, please.
You're going back? Okay.
Let's see, where are you starting?
Nothing ever is going right tonight.
Do you have anything you want to say while we're waiting on the thing?
Sure, I can start a while, I guess. So this is for the MS4 Chesapeake Bay Restoration Work Plan. This is my second presentation before the board on the MS4 program. The first presentation was on November 5th, 2018. I also found records that Sue has done a couple presentations to the board. Last one, November 6th, 2017, and possibly more before that. For the new members, I'd like to give a quick presentation before we get into tonight's main discussion. Please interrupt me at any time if you have any specific questions. So what exactly is MS4? So MS4 stands for Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. And MS4 is a conveyance or system of conveyance that is owned by a public entity that discharges waters within the state, designated or used to collect or designed to or used to collect or convey stormwater, including storm drains, pipes, ditches, etc. And they are not part of a publicly owned treatment facility or sewage treatment plant. So this is totally separate from our sewage facilities. Still starting up here. Let's see. So a raindrop may land on a tree and evaporate. It may land on a farm field and soak into the soil, or it may land on a rooftop, driveway, or road and travel down the street into a storm drain or stream. Precipitation in an urban or suburban area, such as Emmitsburg, that does not evaporate or soak into the ground, but instead runs across the land and into the nearest waterway is considered stormwater runoff. Increased development across the watershed has made stormwater runoff the fastest growing source of pollution to the Chesapeake Bay. So how does stormwater runoff affect the Chesapeake Bay? As stormwater flows across the streets, sidewalks, and lawns, it picks up harmful pollutants and pushes them into storm drains, rivers, and streams. These pollutants can include lawn and garden fertilizers, pet waste, sand and sediment, chemical contaminants, litter, etc. So cigarette litter, bottles, everything like that. Stormwater runoff can cause a number of environmental problems. In order to control and reduce stormwater pollution, the town of Emmitsburg is required to be covered under the United States Environmental Protection Agency's National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System Phase 2 General Discharge Permit Number 13 IM 5500, and this permit lasts until October 30th of 2023. Other Frederick County municipalities covered under the same permit that we are covered in includes Brunswick, Frederick City, Middletown, Mount Airy, Myersville, Thurmont, and Walkersville. So we're one of those participants that are mandatory participants. It is important to note that this permit is mandatory, and it's an unfunded federal and state mandate. Here we go. That's okay, Amy, it's fine. So here just shows the precipitation going down. There's the municipalities that are covered under this mandatory permit. Again, this is a unfunded mandate. Unfortunately, we have no say in this program. So this is not the town's first MS4 permit. The town was first required to be covered under permit number 03 IM 5500. The permit was effective from April 14th, 2003 to April 14th, 2008. The state of Maryland administratively extended this permit from April 15th, 2008 to October 30th of last year, 2018. During this period, the town was responsible for meeting the 6 minimum control measures, which I will discuss here in a few minutes. Also during this time, many outside organizations, including municipalities all across the country, sued the federal and state governments over the permit requirements. The federal and state governments won the lawsuit, and that is why we are still talking about this mandate today. Any permit noncompliance constitutes a violation of the Federal Clean Water Act and is ground for civil and criminal enforcement actions. So I listed the federal violations for permit noncompliance. You can see there's criminal and civil on the bottom. Fines can go up to $250,000, or excuse me, $1 million for the knowing endangerment. In addition, here are the state of Maryland's violations for noncompliance. As you can see from both slides, the penalties are very large for permit noncompliance. EPA and MDE does fine municipalities. For example, Manor Township in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, paid $150,000 in legal, engineering, and staff costs related to negotiate a $175,000 fine down to approximately $41,000. So even though they did that, they had to spend approximately $200,000 on permit noncompliance. So they lost that case. A close one at home, Bel Air, Maryland, was fined $35,000 in 2014 for permit noncompliance, and Baltimore City, Anne Arundel County, and Harford County was fined nearly $250,000 in 2010. There are many, many examples, more examples which can be found in a Google search. I have copies of the news articles regarding these fines if anyone needs copies of those. So in order to remain compliant with the federal and state governments, we are required to continue to make progress on the following 6 minimum control measures: public education and outreach, public involvement and participation, illicit discharge detection and elimination, construction site stormwater runoff control, post-construction stormwater management, and pollution prevention, and good housekeeping. And the new requirement for this permit term is the creation and implementation of a Chesapeake Bay restoration work plan, which is the purpose of our discussions today. Without any, I can skip over the public or all the 6 minimum control measures if there's no, if anyone would like me to go over it, I can, or we can talk about it.
We do 4 or 5, 4 of them now, don't we?
We do all 6.
I was gonna say.
So I can go really quick, or we can just skip over. It's totally up to you. Just keep skipping?
Yes.
Okay. So we're basically, to sum it up in a nutshell, the staff's working really hard. So Rainbow Workshop, Arbor Day with Maddie. We had to do maps. Here's Southgate. We have to inspect the outfalls every single year. Here's the inspection sheet. Pre and post construction site stormwater, that's done by the county. Luckily, it saves us a lot of money for that. Staff has to do yearly mandatory trainings. Okay, so now we'll talk about what we're here tonight for. Okay, so the most important and most expensive requirement of the MS4 permit is the Chesapeake Bay Restoration Work Plan. The permit now requires MS4 communities to commence restoration efforts for 20% of existing development lands that have little, unacceptable, or no stormwater management. Restoration projects must be completed no later by January 1st, 2025. Step 1 of the restoration work plan is to conduct a baseline impervious assessment. Excuse me, quick note, we provided copies of the proposed restoration work plan and baseline impervious assessment to commissioners by email on September 11th. I placed hard copies of the reports on your desk the same day and also sent to the 2 new board members on October 2nd. The town contracted with GPI out of Columbia, Maryland to conduct the required assessment. This contractor was approved by the commissioners on April 1st, 2019. This assessment determined the total impervious surface, such as buildings, concrete, asphalt, and other surfaces that will not absorb water within our jurisdiction, and delineated the portions that are treated with acceptable water quality BMPs, such as rain gardens and stormwater basins constructed after 2002. As you can see from the map, areas in purple are impervious pavements and surfaces, and areas in pink are impervious structures, such as houses and sheds and etc. Here is the impervious assessment for our lands on the mountain. It's very small. And here are the results of the assessment. So total impervious acres that the town is responsible for is 146.74 acres. Then you subtract that from the, you subtract the total impervious acres treated by acceptable methods, such as stormwater basins and rain gardens, which is 40.15 acres, minus the total impervious acres treated by BMPs providing partial water quality, which is 0.46 acres, minus the total impervious acres treated by non-structural practices, such as the swales at the Pembroke development. That's 4.33, and this equals your total impervious acres untreated, which is 101.80, and 20% of that is 20.36 acres. So in other words, we are required to commence restoration efforts for the 20.36 acres of the existing developed land. So step two. Step two is to develop and implement an impervious area restoration work plan in order to treat those 20.36 acres. So here is staff and the mayor's proposal. So in year one, which is almost about to end on the 30th of 2019, October, we completed the following tasks. We developed the impervious baseline assessment. We performed watershed assessments and identified water quality problems and opportunities for restorations, which we'll talk about shortly. Developed the restoration work plan for approval of the Board of Commissioners and MDE afterwards. Assessed opportunities and timelines for implementing the water quality BMPs. Determined funding needs and developed a long-term budget. Developed a list of specific projects to be implemented for restoration and identified them on the restoration activity schedule, which we'll discuss shortly. So the mayor, Kathy, and I, with input from GPI and other engineering firms, are proposing 3 restoration projects in order to meet our restoration requirement of treating the 20.36 impervious acres. The first is planting 10 acres of trees, which will give us 3.80 acres of credit. Areas buffering a stream will be considered high priority. We have been in contact with the Daughters of Charity regarding the possibility of planting the trees on their property. See the left picture on the screen for a possible location by Willow Rill there in the Memorial Park. We have also identified 10 acres on the town's property at the wastewater treatment plant, and that is the picture to your right. It abuts the stream, and it's right now we just mow the land. Here's an example of tree plantings completed by Frederick County in order to meet their own restoration requirements. This is basically day 2 of the plantings, so they're seedlings. So are there any questions on our first proposed project?
Can some of those trees be planted in the new golf course? Frisbee golf.
No, because you need to, and I'll go ahead, Zach, you can correct me if I'm wrong. The idea is to get the most bang for your buck, essentially.
Okay.
So what you're going to do is pick your largest acreage, and these 2 locations provide a large acre. If you're going to just spot plant trees in your disc golf, you're not going to get any real credit for it. So that's why these locations were proposed. Not that the plantings aren't a good idea back there, but as far as the permit's concerned, this is where you're going to get the most credit for.
Yeah, the EPA and MDE, they want to see continuous planting, so it has to be all in 1 acre.
Based on the number of trees or total ground covered?
Total ground covered. Any more questions for that one? Okay, we'll move on. In year 2, which starts very, very soon, we will collect contractor proposals for the 10 acres of tree plantings, apply for restoration grants and access opportunities to form partnerships, which we have already started doing, evaluate and refine the budget needs for project implementation, update and submit, they're called Urban Best Management Practices database. Basically, that's all of your stormwater basins, inlets, etc. And we will maintain the inspection records for all BMPs. The second restoration project that we are proposing is to retrofit the Silo Hill Stormwater Management Pond. Here is a picture of the existing pond. The Silo Hill Extended Detention Pond was constructed in 2002. However, it does not provide adequate treatment. The design of this facility consists of a dry pond with multi-stage risers, although the pond appears to be functionally wet. The facility has a total drainage area of 22.22 acres and intercepts runoff from the entire Silo Hill subdivision. Total untreated impervious within the drainage area is 7.96 acres, which that's what we would get credit for. Estimated cost range between $100,000 to $150,000. Again, the estimated costs do not include possible grant fundings and or donations. We have been in close contact with the Homeowners Association with Silo Hill, and it sounds like they're very eager to help and chip in this project.
I have a question.
Absolutely.
What kind of restoration were we putting in, a biotech pond?
I'm almost there.
Okay. I was just wondering what kind you were going to put in.
Sure. I think it's the next slide, actually. So there are many options for basin retrofits. For example, the one that staff and the mayor have been leaning towards, and also our engineers, is the sand filters. So, which is shown on this slide. Sand filters are practices that capture and store runoff before passing it through a filter bed of sand. Sand filters are typically designed with a forebay and a filter bed filled with soil, sand, and stone. As stormwater flows into the forebay, which is the top, the black area there, large particles settle, then finer particles and other pollutants are removed as stormwater flows through the filtering media. Pollutants are removed through filtering, sedimentation, biological uptake, and infiltration into the underlying soil. Filtered runoff may collect and return to the conveyance system or partially infiltrate into the soil. So we like this one because you can put trees in it, you can put flowers in it, so it serves multiple purposes for the bees, for everything.
What is the life expectancy of this one?
30 years.
If you said that, I missed it, I'm sorry.
Nope, I did not. Another engineering partner recommends wet ponds, which is shown on this slide. Wet ponds are large-scale practices with permanent pools. They combine an extended detention or shallow wetland with a permanent pool. A wet pond uses both a forebay and permanent pool to treat stormwater runoff. Stormwater runoff is filtered and treated through settling and nutrient uptake by plants and other aquatic organisms. If you all have been through where the car wash is, the Silo Hill Car Wash, right across the street there, that's a wet pond. So in year 3, we will be, we're proposing to implement the first restoration project, which is the tree plantings. We will also collect contractor proposals for the second restoration project of the Silo Hill Stormwater Pond retrofit. We will apply for restoration grants and also assess opportunities to form more partnerships. We will continue to update our urban BMP database. We will develop adaptive management strategies for BMP implementation. Continue to identify opportunities for water quality improvement projects and partnerships to meet the restoration requirements.
I do have another question.
Sure.
Can we get credit for tree plantings that have already been planted in the town?
No, we cannot, because they're not, but like I said before, they're not repetitive. It's not a large partial land.
I was seeing that Emma Gordon's had a large planting behind, I remember a large planting behind some of the houses in Emma Gordon's. I don't know if it's still there or not, but I remember a large planting back there. Who planted that? Do you know?
I don't recall.
I think-
No, we can't, anything, it's gotta be from when this submitted moving forward. It can't be things that we've
Somebody had
done.
planted
Sure.
a lot back there at one time.
That might have been the state.
Could've been.
I was back there at one point and I saw a lot of state signs.
Oh, okay.
So they might have tried to do that for their own credit. Any more questions?
No.
All right. In year 4, we will implement the second restoration project. And again, we'll continue to update our urban BMP database and submit narratives to the state. In year 5, we will collect contractor proposals for the third restoration project, which we are proposing to be the North Gate extended dry pond retrofit. So we will apply for restoration grants again, and we will update and submit project implementation status and the restoration activity schedule.
That one will be a buyer too?
We're recommending the sand filter again. So again, this is our third project that we're recommending. We greatly believe this project will help with flooding issues at the entrance of North Gate. If I can get my clicker to work. As you can see, when the stormwater comes in through the North Gate community, there is a swale here, which I have no reason why that's there. The water just goes right there and goes right out to the stream. So this is not really serving any kind of a purpose. This pond was built in 1994. The design of this facility consisted of a dry pond. This facility has a total drainage area of 17.31 acres and intercepts runoff from the North Gate subdivision. Total impervious within the drainage area is 6.06 acres. Estimated costs range from, again, $100,000 to $150,000. The estimated costs do not include possible grant funding and or donations. We have been in contact with the Homeowners Association of Northgate. In year 6, we will implement the third restoration project, which is the Northgate Pond retrofit. And then we start the cycle all over again. The next permit will start on October 31st, 2024. Unless the current permit is extended by the federal and state governments, we must then start the process all over. Baseline impervious assessment, then treat another 20%, etc. It'll never end. It'll just keep 20% every single 5 years.
Probably eventually gonna run out.
First, the ponds are gonna run out. He's correct.
That's when we get into, we were looking at stream restorations, which I can show at the end of this slide. There's so many different options. It's just these were the best bang for our buck. These were the low hanging fruits. These were the projects that we wanted to start with because they were the easier projects and the more affordable projects for the town.
I had a quick question for you.
Sure.
Went through all these last night. What is included and not included? Because I see the elementary school. Is that a county funded one, or is that not counting towards our total acreage or anything like that? Because on the map you showed, it was definitely in purple. But
Yeah.
on anything listed for the BMP name or anything like that, there was no Emmitsburg Elementary or anything in that surrounding area.
That's one thing we were looking at. However, the contractor did not recommend it because it would be extremely expensive. I have the numbers here, which we
But that's
can
fine.
go over.
I don't know if that fell under a county because it is a county school and it affects their numbers, or it
Yep.
affects our numbers and that'll come back to bite us at some point, or
Unfortunately, that falls under us. However, they're responsible for their own permits. So anything we would form a partnership with them, we would have to split everything. So we would split the impervious acreage credits. So
One thing to note with this plan, I'm sure Zach was going to touch on it. Once you adopt this plan and it's submitted to MD, it is not set in stone. If we were to find a better option, say in year 3 moving forward, we certainly can modify the plan and submit it to MDE. So just know that we can make changes to this going forward, but this is our best plan that we can get put into place right now to satisfy our permit by the end of the month. Excuse me.
yes, absolutely. So in summary, here is what the mayor, Kathy, and I are proposing. As you can see, we'll gain credit. We'll also gain credits from things we already do, such as mechanical street sweeping and catch basin cleaning, which are your inlets. I have created a log, which our public works crew fills out monthly. They basically weigh all the dry materials that are swept up from the streets and cleaned out of the storm drains. We then multiply the pounds collected by a formula given to us by the state. We are confident that we will obtain the remaining 1.73 acres of impervious covered by these 2 in-house activities. We also gained credit recently for the work completed on the Provincial Parkway storm drain. Overall, the estimated cost to meet our mandatory permit requirements range from $256,000 to roughly $376,000. This does not include possible grants and donations, and also does not include meeting the first through 6, such as public education, outreach, all that. It does not include that. This does not include possible grants. However, grants are highly competitive. There are so many municipalities that are shooting for these, so we will do our best and apply for as many as possible. So this is the worst case scenario. Are there any questions?
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner Sweeney, your Lions Club has a program of trees, providing trees, and that would bite into this cost significantly if we had the trees.
yes, we donated for the Arbor Day the last 2 years.
Right,
But the Lions Club's dedicated to planting 1 million trees a year.
1 million.
Yeah, across the
We'll take them.
our little club can't afford that, but we'll get as many as we can.
Right, and we're going to continue, as Zach said, to look for donations, whether, through civic organizations or landscapers or private businesses that want to donate trees, to keep the cost as low as possible. If you average it out, over a course of 6 years, we have to, pretty much budget about $62,000 to $65,000 a year for, this permit alone.
I have another question. We don't get any credit for the bio ponds we have already.
We do. That's taken off of the total impervious
We
number.
have one, I think we have 5. Five.
Yeah, when they did the baseline impervious assessment, they checked all the years and they did inspections. Yeah,
So we currently get, what,
40.
40.15 acres of credit for
For the other
what we
bio
already
pond.
have in place.
So anything constructed after 2002, they consider acceptable at the state level.
Will Rudders and all them be part of that?
Yes, so that will not go towards our figures at all.
How about, does anything have to be done with Dunkin' Donuts when they come in?
They do not have to, as of my understanding right now, they do not have to do anything with the stormwater pond
But they do
because,
have to have a planting.
I'm sorry?
We recommend planting of trees.
Yes, we are going to recommend planting of trees.
They have to plant so many at wherever maybe they can donate theirs at a spot we could pick out.
Right, we are going to recommend landscaping, sure.
I'm done. Anybody else? Commissioner O'Donnell?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Ritz?
No, I mean, yes. They're two. Let's just wait till the end, because maybe it'll get addressed. So I'd rather. Maybe it'll answer my question.
I think we're at the end.
Right there.
Oh,
Yeah, we're at the end.
Oh, the summary. Okay, then I do have a question. The summary, we didn't, on page 33, and then there was reference to it on this chart as well, the mechanical street sweeping.
Yes.
I know that right now the street sweeping is Main Street, and I know it's probably a lot to ask of town staff, but do you think going forward, maybe we can do some street sweeping to include North and South Seaton as well? It really needs it.
Right. I think they did it before fallen firefighters. It's not something that's on their schedule to do, but it's certainly something that we can look into and discuss with the Director of Public Works, especially if we're not getting the poundage that we need for street sweeping out of East and West Main Street. We will have to increase our area to make sure that we meet that last 1.73.
7-3.
Thank you.
So it's a win-win.
1.73
That's
acres.
the way I look at it. you
Right.
know. So that would be great. So
Have our own sweeper, correct?
We do.
Yes.
Yep.
Because we used to borrow one.
okay, then I do have just two quick questions.
Sure.
Then regarding the mandates, the federal and state mandates. Do we have those posted on our website, or at least directing people to them, in case it's asked that hey, what is
Sure.
this?
I don't think we do, but I can get those up tomorrow.
Might be beneficial.
Sure, absolutely.
And then, of course, the cost to meet the requirements. Obviously, you mentioned grants and other donations and whatnot. I guess then the only other recourse would be budget time, like Ms. Willett said. We'd have to budget accordingly. Do we foresee any potential fallback on residents to help compensate for this?
No. I think, that ultimately that will be a board, I speak too quickly, that'll be a board decision if they want to levy anything, but at this time, we're going to try to manage the budget as is
Okay.
with making the transfers as much as possible and still maintaining the services that we do now.
All right.
So
That's
we
good
will
to
be
know. Thank you.
creating a capital improvements project. Is that what we're going to be doing?
There'll be a Fund 2. Right now, we currently have a line item for stormwater management in Fund 2. Conversations will be had with the mayor and the town accountant, whether or not we establish a separate line item specifically for this permit. We'll decide what's most appropriate.
Will this have a direct relation to wild water that gets into the wastewater treatment plant and reducing runoff in that sense?
No.
Not,
No, it will not have. It's totally separate.
gotcha. Okay. That's unfortunate.
That goes to our sewer plant.
It's a big stretch.
Well, to the- we treat it.
No, I understand that. Well, no, I understand that also, but I'm wondering if, if we're capturing water, is this the water that's also infiltrating our wastewater system?
I think I don't know, Dan and Kathy be able to better answer this, but I think the most of the wild water is coming from either rain down into the ponds or leaks in the pipes. So these are totally separate pipes
Sure.
than
Sure. No,
the
I'm
sewer
sorry.
pipes.
I'm with you. I'm just trying to be Pollyanna. I was hoping.
I'm rubbing off on you something.
Any other questions for the MS4?
Yeah, I have one.
Commissioner Burns?
You you kept mentioning HOA. Now, when you're talking about the HOA is willing to help, is that coming out of their budgets? Is that coming out of their individuals in their HOA? I know, for
Sure.
example, the Southgate HOA, there was an issue with their storm drainage system, and they had to pay for it all.
Correct.
Now, is that something that's going to happen with all these Silo Hill and Northgate and everything?
No, we have easements over each of the stormwater basins. So basically, any kind of upgrades we would pay for, unless there is a failure. So, such as Southgate, for example, there was a failure to the pipe. So we have an easement over that. However, we didn't install that. So if we would install, for example, the Southgate, if we would have installed that, we would be responsible for the maintenance of that.
Okay.
So in the future, yes, we would have to maintain those.
Mr. Cliff? Cliff?
Mr. Mayor.
Oh, thank you. This started 2010 and 2011 Executive Order 13508, President Obama. Really, the EPA has taken over the Chesapeake Bay. So this is where it's more than just a nice thing. It needs to be protected. It is recognized as an asset, and that's what really got this rolling.
Sure.
Okay, any other questions?
Mr. Sweeney, do you need a motion?
I'm getting to that. I'm waiting for everybody to finish their questions first.
That's my question.
I need a motion on the approval of the MS4 restoration, 5-year plan.
I make a motion to approve the MS4 impervious restoration 5-year plan as presented.
I second it.
Motion's been made by Commissioner O'Donnell and seconded by Commissioner Burns. Is there any other discussion before we vote?
No, sir.
All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, Maddie, go.
Last
Just real
one.
quick.
Approval of the resolution for Maryland State Archives record retention.
All right,
That's for our records here at the town office.
yeah.
We got another one.
Ms. Shaw's going to come up
all
here
those
just
in
to
favor?
answer any questions you might have. I'll go over this just, I said Ms. Shaw. I didn't say Michelle. Might have sounded like it. Just a few notes. We're on page 34. Date of the last record retention schedule for the town of Emmitsburg was January 12th, 1979. The date that it was last presented to you as the board was July 9th, 2018. Maryland State Archives recommends updating and reviewing your record retention schedule every 2 years. We have proposed the adoption of 3 separate record retention schedules. It would cover the accounting department, the planning department, and the administrative department. Once approved by the board, the Maryland State Archives would review the schedules for final approval and compliance. You guys reviewed and approved the revised schedules at the town meeting on July 9th, 2018. We sent the draft to the Maryland State Archives for review. They made some changes. They basically revisions that they had suggested. The most common were they had no problems with the retention timeline or time frame. They wanted to see a new formatting, and they wanted some language changes to be done. Why we pursued this was, one, to clean up some office space. We are a small office, and to get rid of documents that were no longer needed. And by law, we are required to have an up-to-date record retention schedule. Again, ours had not been updated for 40 years. It's missing many of the documents that we use. The old record retention schedule does not have a lot of the documents that we currently use as the towns continue to evolve over the 40 years. I'll let Maddie talk to you about some of the changes that happened. Our record retention policy has to be adopted by resolution. So once she goes over kind of a synopsis of what's in each department. Then we'll refer back to the resolution, and that resolution would then adopt your retention policy. No.
So as Kathy mentioned, the Maryland State Archives reviewed the schedules that we submitted to them in July 2018, and they had some suggested revisions. Mostly, as you can see from the start of the new record retention schedules on page 39, it's a different format than the old schedules that I brought to you guys in July 2018 that are starting on page 92. They essentially wanted, for each item listed, such as the minutes, the agenda packets, they wanted each item on its own new page and us to detail how much of that item we currently have, where we store it, what the date span of the items are, and our retention schedule that we're proposing. And if we were proposing a permanent retention schedule, why we need to keep it permanently. Let's see. Most of the language changes that they requested involved clarifying if what happens, then what will happen after that. So for instance, we couldn't simply just say retain 7 years. We needed to say retain 7 years, then destroy. Or if an item was permanent, we couldn't just say permanent. We had to say permanent, retain 25 years, then transfer to the Maryland State Archives. All permanent items eventually do go to the state archives, which are accessible to the public. And so I wanted to summarize briefly what's on. I think I have about 47 pages worth of record retention schedule here, and I know it's very tedious, so I thought that a summary PowerPoint would be helpful. The accounting department schedule, which is M406, has almost everything listed as retaining 7 years and either transferring it to the Maryland State Archives or destroying the items. And the 7-year retention guideline that we have was suggested by our auditors. So we have the audit reports as permanent, retaining 7 years, transferring. Budget and fiscal records, retaining permanently, 7 years, transferring. The banking records, retaining 7 years after audited, then destroying. Accounts payable, retaining 7 years after audited, then destroying. And for loan and bond documents, if it was a larger loan, such as a loan that's $500,000 or more, we wanted to retain that permanently for reference. Otherwise, all other loan documents would be destroyed after 7 years. Same, the 7 years after audited apply also to the revenue documents and grant records. The water, sewer, and trash billing, the payroll records, the general ledger, journal entries, the personnel records, and just for general correspondence, such as maybe letters we got from the county executive, things like that. We have a guideline of retaining 1 year, then screening annually, and items that we no longer need or think are important for the historical origin of the town or that document the town's accomplishments, we would keep permanently, otherwise they would be destroyed. The planning department, which is schedule M407, these were recommendations from our town planner, Mr. Golden. Almost all the items are retaining 10 years, then transferring to the Maryland State Archives. For items that Mr. Golden thought he would need to reference more frequently, he suggested that we keep those 25 years in office, then transferring them to the archives. It should be noted that property records are permanent records, so that is why we are retaining these permanently. Code enforcement records are 5 years after last entry date, then destroying. And parking tickets, flagging letters, etc. would be 3 years after they are paid, then destroying. And then the last schedule is the administrative department schedule. This is your commissions, your committees, etc. For meeting minutes and agenda packets, we would like to retain those 10 years permanently, or retain permanently, then after 10 years transfer to the Maryland State Archives. For meeting recordings, we have a lot of CDs and cassettes that we no longer have the technology to listen to. So if there is a written account of the minutes, we would destroy those after 10 years. Otherwise, if there is no written account, we would keep those permanently, then transfer. Same with legislation, the 10 years. Public hearings that result in legislation, 10 years and transferring. Public hearings without legislation, we would keep those 3 years after the resolution, then destroy them. Election items, we're keeping those permanently so we can see who was elected to office in the town. Election others, that would be like your ballots and stuff. Those would be destroyed after 3 years. Financial disclosures, 4 years, then destroy. That's per our town code. The ethic violation complaint forms, it would be 5 years after resolution, then destroy. Contracts and agreements, maintain until the warranty expires or the life of the contract, plus 3 years, then destroy. Requests for proposals, likewise, insurance certificates until they expire, accident reports, 3 years after an accident, then they would be destroyed. Workers' compensation claims, length of employment plus 7 years, then destroying. Getting near the end, there's 27. Insurance claims, 3 years after claim closed, then destroying. Phone message books, 2 years after last entry, then destroying. Correspondence, likewise with the accounting, retaining 1 year, then screening items, and historically significant documents would be retained permanently. Leases, retain 3 years after expiration, then destroy. Building records, length of property ownership, plus 5 years, then destroying. Vehicle records, destroy after sale of town vehicle. Last slide. Hunting and fishing license, 3 years after issued, then destroy. Community pool records, 4 years, then destroy. Park and gym reservation forms, 1 year, then destroy. Vendor license, which that would be your door-to-door salesman. That would be 1 year after issued, we would keep and then destroy. The Public Information Act or PIA request would be 3 years after fulfilled, then destroyed. And then the legal opinions and litigation is permanent. We would keep those 10 years in-house, then transfer. Are there any questions?
You scan all this into the computer and then it tells you when to destroy them? Because who keeps track of all that, all them years?
So what I would like to do is, for the most part, we have things in file boxes. We would label how long to keep the item. So if we just put into a box water and sewer billing receipts, we would write on the box, retain 7 years, then destroy, and we would put the date that it should be destroyed. So we know when we're going through our file room, after this date, we can destroy this item.
You have a lot to destroy now.
Yes, we do. We cannot fit anything else in our file
Right.
closet.
I know. I don't think anything's been destroyed since I've been here.
No, there's a lot of records back there that need to be. So we have a big task ahead of us.
That was part of the, if you remember, you authorized the purchase of Shore Scan, so we're continuously scanning things into our computer here so that when this was adopted, we can then destroy what we don't need and free up a lot of space. Everybody is anxious for this to get adopted.
Any questions for Marty?
He's punching.
Only if Mr. Burns and Mr. Davis want to remain on the board after tonight's meeting.
This is a long meeting. We don't usually have them this long.
No.
No questions? I need a motion to accept to have the resolution approved for the Maryland State Archives.
I propose a resolution approving the Maryland State Archives Records Retention Scheduled M406, M407, M408 for the town of Emmitsburg.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Burns. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Ritz. Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion?
I zoned out for a minute. Did you adopt the resolution? I'm sorry.
Yes, we are now.
Okay.
Yeah. I
All in
don't think
favor, say
Commissioner-
aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Motion carries 5-0 to accept the resolution.
Did the
Resolution
resolution have to be
19-0.
specifically named by
He
number?
announced all of them.
You went
have to
Okay,
vote separately?
all right. That's good.
You did
We're
2.
good.
406, 407.
Yeah,
408.
Yes,
4-8. He
we're
did them
good.
all, yes.
We're good. Thank you.
Okay.
Zoned out for a minute.
We are. It's
Once
11
done.
o'clock.
Alrighty, we're ready to set the agenda for the next meeting, November the 4th.
Okay. So I have 2 administrative items for the November meeting. The first one would be a solar community array presentation by First Energy. as requested by the board. First Energy will come in and talk about the parameters involved with a community array and how accounts can and cannot be added. Second item for admin business would be the proclamation for Municipal Government Works Month, November 2019, for consideration. Agenda items, number 1, bids for ongoing sewer relining projects in the town for consideration.
What was that again?
Bids for ongoing sewer relining projects in the town for consideration.
To address Wildwater, yes.
Correct.
Ooh,
To continue what we started last year. I'll do that one in December. Number
Number
3.
Two.
Approval of the 140 South Seaton subdivision process for consideration.
South Seaton,
140 South Seaton subdivision process for consideration. So the board has to adopt not the subdivision itself, but the process that the town went through. Number,
140 subdivision. Huh?
the 140 South Seaton Avenue, the property
Oh,
the town
I'm sorry.
owns? Yes. Number 5, approval of the town mayor entering into a real estate listing
Give me the phone.
agreement
I'm missing some.
for the purpose of selling 140 South Seaton Avenue for consideration.
To sell it, okay.
The mayor as a representative of the town of Emmitsburg.
Yes.
Terrific, okay.
And then number 5, this one's kind of long and we can break it down however you want. At your October 1st, 2018 town meeting, the Board of Commissioners reserved the right to determine stipulations regarding fencing and sign requirements for 600 East Main Street extended during the rezoning process. That was the Baldacchino property.
Correct.
Okay? We now have somebody else that wants the property. So for consideration, the board will determine if Town Code 17.20.090, commercial district buffer, is necessary, and if the proposed sign designs are appropriate for the area.
And
That
will
is
be-
a long agenda title.
Will be provided samples of the sign, like what like a rendering?
Yes, we'll have that in the meeting packet. He's going to provide that for us.
Thank you. Sorry, didn't mean to be rude.
So it's,
I have 2 other items that can wait till December or not. I know the board typically likes to keep a light meeting in December because of the tree lighting on Monday night. They would be just a consent agenda item, adding a member to the Sustainable Community Board, and the vote on the free metered holiday parking.
we can do them.
Would
this
you
way.
like to
They
do
don't wanna
those?
take too-
Okay,
quick.
so agenda item number 6 would be free metered holiday parking for consideration. And then a consent item, appointment of Mark Long to the Sustainable Community Board for consideration. And for anybody, the Sustainable Community Board votes on community legacy grants requests.
Mr. Sweeney,
Yes.
I don't recall if we've gotten this done. I apologize, I'm a little foggy at the moment. Have we determined the hours of trick or treating for the sake
Yes.
of?
5:30 to 6 to 7.
The board did this?
The parade's at 7.
Okay,
Line up for the parade 6:45, but some trick or treat 2/7 if they're not in the parade.
okay.
And then the directly following the parade, the block party will be at the fire hall.
Okay, so
Like it usually is.
so the Lions Club has determined this?
No, the
Did we-
VFW
Sorry.
VFW runs
Okay.
the show. We are doing the activities in the fire hall. The Lions Club does. The
So
parade.
staff were okay? I mean, we're not
Yes,
gonna-
we've had notice of it for a while now, and it's been posted.
Okay,
I missed number 2. What was
Thank you,
number
sir.
2?
Oh, number
You're
2.
welcome.
Number 2 is the social media management policy for consideration.
Social media.
This is basically just summary real quick. MML's recommendation to protect the town against liability when managing our social media, Twitter, Facebook.
I don't know how people have time to do that stuff.
Don't.
Alrighty, okay. For the administrative business, we have solar community array. And we have, what's the other one we have? We had 2 for that, right?
Proclamation for
Proclamation of
Municipal
Government,
Government Works
yeah.
Month.
Proclamation of government.
Municipal
Works
Government
Month.
Works Month.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do we need to do these separately,
Which ones?
or just consent, or vote on the whole thing at one time, or do we have to do it separate?
You can do it all at one time.
Okay. On the agenda will be bids for the.
Mr. President,
Yes.
before we go through the list and vote on it, I was going to throw something out there. I know we have a huge list, but it was an administrative item. If you would
That's right, I
permit me
forgot about
to talk about that.
Yes, go ahead.
Actually, it's 2 things, but the one might not be. It might be a moot point. But administrative business item I was considering to add. I don't know if we're all familiar. In the past, we, as a board, expressed concern regarding the timing of the pedestrian lights at the square, and then there was a reconfiguration where North Seaton goes first now instead of South Seaton. We flipped those. I was hoping that maybe we could discuss the potential, as a discussion, and then potentially go forward addressing a letter to the SHA collectively as a board, and the mayor to address what was initially proposed when we all sat in this room and SHA came here regarding the traffic lights, where it'd be a rotating, it would alternate, and then there'd be an all pedestrian cross. That seemed to go the wayside, so I don't know if that's something we would like to discuss as a board or not. I'm throwing it out there for consideration. And if you all say tonight no, then that's fine as well.
So it's on to change the lights so they would allow pedestrian crossing. All at the
Yeah,
same
to
time.
alternate, because then you also have individuals that are turning left against traffic, and then cars going around due to the reconfiguration of the square. It seems to be a little dicier now. People are impatient.
Yeah.
Just a thought, safety issue.
I don't have any problem with it. Do we want to do that now, or do we want to do it for December?
I mean,
How much more you got on December? Anything a lot, just what do we have
Off
for
the top of my
December?
head, I think I have 3.
3.
I mean, this is something I forgot to add it. This is something that Commissioner Ritz and I have discussed, and I know that this is something that staff has tried to work on and not had any luck with State Highway. So
So we have to send a letter like we
I
just
think
did for the
his
bridge?
proposal has merit.
I don't have any problem
if it
with
came
it,
from
just
all this.
up to you guys.
So.
Do you want to add this to the?
November or December right now? Is that where we are on this item?
Oh, it'll be November. Yeah, this is November. So if we think this is too full, then we can discuss it in December.
Would waiting another month, would it really make a difference? I mean, I'd be agreeable to move it to December, but then I know too, we kind of wanted December's meeting to be as fast as possible. So
It strikes me this could potentially be a short item, potentially. but
potentially.
Potential is a dangerous word.
Is just getting consent to send letter to the state, or,
It would be an admin item. So what you
I
could
mean,
do
is that what we're gonna do?
you could do a discussion of the timing at the lights at the intersection of Main Street and North Seaton for consideration, and then that way it leaves it open to an action item. So if you have a discussion and you want to direct staff to then prepare this letter on behalf of the board, we can do it that way.
Yeah, timing, is it timing issue or more the pattern, the rotating? I don't know how to name it.
I don't know.
I don't know how they're,
It'll be for discussion.
Okay, that's great. And the only other thing would be a consent item, and I'll bring Commissioner Davis up to speed with Parks and Rec, but we have several members in violation that collectively, as a Parks and Rec committee, recommended to remove, but that needs to go before the board. So maybe I will bring Commissioner Davis up to speed, and maybe he has some individuals who'd be interested in joining in the meantime as well. And then we're also losing a member. Commissioner Burns was a member of the Parks and Rec Committee as well.
Oh, so you gave me a non-functional committee. I got it. Yeah, what did I get? Thank you, Mayor.
So it's
Aim to please.
approval of new members?
Potential. So do we want to put that officially on there now, or we want to chat about it offline?
Well,
And
you might
then
want to find some people to put on.
When's your next Parks Committee meeting?
third Tuesday of November.
That's after ours.
You want, yeah.
I'd say we put on December, because it's after our November meeting.
And a lot of them are currently expired members anyway to their term. Does that matter?
No, we just have to ask them if they want to continue.
Okay.
Alrighty. Where are we at? Where we stop at? We're on the bids now, I mean, the agenda.
Yes, sir.
And number 3 for admin, we'll be discussing the, traffic light pattern.
As it relates.
As admin, yeah, that's for the main, for Main Street.
It's not just.
And not just pedestrians, it's vehicles. So
Vehicles, too.
instead of Main Street going at the same time, it would be westbound at one time and then eastbound at the other, as initially was proposed by SHA when they did the whole square redesign.
Just, will be, discussion of street light.
I have discussion of the timing / pattern of lights at intersection of Main Street and Seton Avenue for consideration.
Okay,
How's that sound?
Sounds
that's
right?
fine.
Perfect.
Okay, we have 3 agenda items for, admin. Okay, we're on regular agenda, we've got bids for the, I can't even read my writing.
Sewer
line, relining. Where are we relining the bids for? Which ones are we relining now?
It will be, well, we want to set it out for 3 years so we can continue the process. But this year, we're looking at behind the post office, along Willow Rill there, and I think in the other section is up near Irishtown.
Okay.
But I'll come back when I'll have the exact linear feet
Okay.
for both.
Alrighty. Number 2 is social media, MML.
Social media management policy.
Number 3 is, South Seaton 140.
Right, subdivision process for consideration.
Number 4 is the mayor, giving the mayor permission to sell it.
To enter into a real estate listing agreement.
Okay. Number 5 is East Main
600 East Main Street extended,
buffer.
determining the commercial district buffer and signage.
And number 6 is free parking,
Metered parking.
free metered parking. So that's it for the agenda items. And then we had consent agenda was, Mark Long,
Correct.
to go on to the,
Sustainable Community
sustainable.
Board.
Is he the only one?
You approved Sharon Hain at the last meeting,
Okay.
so that will satisfy the 2 vacancies.
Alrighty. I need a motion to accept the meeting agenda as presented.
I make a motion to accept the meeting agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion's been made by Commissioner O'Donnell, second by Commissioner Ritz. Any other discussion or things to add to this agenda?
Yes, sir.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Motion carries 5-0. I need a motion to, well, I gotta sign. We have to sign the proclamations and stuff too, right?
There is one spelling change on John Clapp's proclamation.
Anything else to sign, text amendments or anything?
If you,
Yes, no?
Yeah, and I need a picture of Commissioner Burns.
Oh, okay. By yourself.
Wait, like an action picture.
Running out the door.
I need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion's been made, Commissioner O'Donnell,
Second.
Second by Commissioner Davis. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any nays?
Quite hear you. Repeat what you said.
Aye.